Hi, I'm Ayla. I'm so excited to see you guys today. So I'm just gonna start off with a quick question. Who loves Mexican food? Raise hands. Double handing that. Love Mexican food. No, but my family and I, just a few days ago, we went to a Mexican restaurant, and whew, so good. Like in the moment, my dad had like chimichangas, my mom had like this fajita, and I had this amazing fajita, and it had chicken and scallops and shrimp and peppers and onions inside this like pineapple bowl, and I felt like I was in heaven. It was just amazing. And I just think about that food that you guys have had, like the Mexican restaurant, and then think what happens the day after. If you know what I mean. All of our stomachs the day after were just like, ooh, that was not so good of an idea. We were kind of regretting, not really regretting actually, but our stomachs were not satisfied. They were in pain. But I mean, that pain is it's not really unusual for me. So I'm gonna get a little personal. So I have IBS, which is irritable bowel syndrome. So I am constantly in pain, constantly cramping, constantly discomfort. There's a lot of constant discomfort in my stomach. I can't eat certain foods. I have to watch how I act, how I feel, because if I'm too anxious, I feel sick. If I'm too happy, I get sick. If I'm too sad, I get sick. So I have to really strict and be careful how I'm acting and how I'm feeling. And so I take a lot of medicine to kind of help control that. And I take just a bunch of different vitamins and other medicines to help my stomach calm itself down. I go to different doctors, and I sometimes even try not to eat because sometimes it makes me feel better. I have to remind myself, Ayla, eat, Ayla, eat, Ayla, eat. No, but I literally can go to all these things. I cannot eat. I can try and take all these meds and go to all these doctors, but in the end, I'm just dissatisfied, and I'm not satisfied with the answers. I'm not satisfied with the feeling, and there's just constant, I'm not happy. I'm not satisfied with anything. And so I don't think I'm alone in that. I think that we all have those mindsets, especially with life. We can be sad and, or just life with family, life with friends, boyfriend, girlfriend, or the lack of. But we try and find these things to cope with that. We drink, we go out to party, we hang out with all these guys and girls for the night, or we do other things that just try and satisfy just for that split second. Same thing when I take my medicine. I want to satisfy for that split second, but in the end, at the end of the day, it just goes back to the beginning, and we find out that nothing works, and we're back in this constant cycle that we've been in, and we feel like we can't get out. But I honestly truly think that it's a root of us wanting to be loved, us wanting to be wanted and chosen, because we all want that. We all want to be chosen by our families, our friends, the guy or girl that we like. We want that attention and affirmation. But the thing is you guys already are. You guys already are chosen and loved and wanted. And someone chose and wanted, I don't want to, but he chose to be on the cross because he loved you, and he wanted you to have a life with the Father and with him. And so I'm going to talk about that today. So if you guys can open up to Luke 23, 44 to 49, and we're just going to talk about just Jesus' death on the cross and a little bit of that. So it says, it was now about the 6th hour, and there was darkness over the whole land until the 9th hour, while the sun's light failed. And the curtain of the temple was torn in two. Then Jesus, calling out with a loud voice, said, Father, into your hands I commit my spirit. And having said this, he breathed his last. Now when the centurion saw what had taken place, he praised God, saying, Certainly this man was innocent. And all the crowds that had assembled for this spectacle, when they saw what had taken place, returned home beating their breasts. And all his acquaintances and the women who had followed him from Galilee stood at a distance watching these things. So I'm going to just pause there for a second, because I'm just going to talk about this for a second. So the author of this is Luke. He's the author of this book. He's a physician, which we find that in Colossians 4:14. And Luke here especially in verse 44, he's telling us exactly what time is going on and where this is going on. Now, in this time, the 6th hour was technically referenced as noon, and which is, he says, it's now about the 6th hour, and there was darkness until the 9th hour. And so this is just giving us a time frame of when this event's taking place. And so the whole land that he's talking about is the land of Golgotha. The land of Golgotha is just this, it means skull, the skull. And it's just this land of death. There's literally a skull, like if you look at pictures, there's a skull, on the side of this, like cliff that they were on. And so we see that it's just dark, which he's actually referencing Joel, who's a prophet. Luke here is referencing Joel, who's a prophet in the Old Testament, and it says, the sun shall be turned to darkness and the moon to blood before the great and awesome day of the Lord comes. And so Luke here's referencing that because Jesus, his entire life is fulfilling the Old Testament, which is why he's referencing that. And so then he goes on to 45, and it says, well, the sun's light failed and the curtain of the temple was torn in two. Now the curtain, this is what separated us from God. So the priest once a year would be able to go into this, into the presence of God. And this was a huge moment because the fact that this is torn in two no longer confined or limited God's spirit or presence just to be in that space. But it allowed it to be everywhere. And everyone could have access to it. Not just the priest, not just the people up here, but every single person, the lowest of the low, the highest of the high, anyone could have access to it. And so we see that it was torn in two. And then Luke goes into Jesus' last words where it says, Jesus calling out with a loud voice, and he's like screaming this, Father, into your hands I commit my spirit. And having said this, he breathed his last. Now this word commit, I'm going to pause there. Because a lot of us think that, oh, I'm going to commit like to this and this. I'm going to commit to this relationship. I'm going to commit to this sport. But here, Jesus is meaning to give in charge or to entrust with. He's giving up his spirit. He's choosing to give up his spirit. Which is weird because you're thinking, oh, people, like, they killed him. Which, yes, they put him on we put him on this cross. But Jesus is in control the whole time. He's the one that actually gave up his spirit. It wasn't anything that they did or anything that they did to kill him. But he's the one that was like, it's time. It is time for me to go now. It's time for me to be with the Father. And so we just see that he's giving up his spirit. And he's in charge of that. And then the moment that he gives up his spirit and he breathes his last breath, we see the centurion, he's basically in charge of the event, making sure that what's happening is actually being carried on, that Jesus is actually going to die. He was in charge of that. He was in charge of all the Roman officers, beating him, mocking him, putting him on the cross, kneeling him there. And then he's here saying, certainly this man was innocent. Now, I find this just very radical because this man who I feel at the beginning didn't really think much of it. But the moment that Jesus actually truly gave up his spirit and saw everything that had happened was like, there's no way that this man couldn't be innocent. Or could it not be? Yeah. Could it not be innocent? Like, he is. And he's realizing in his heart, he knows that, like, this man truly was the Son of God. And so he's praising God, though, because I feel like he knows what's going on. And so then we see the crowds leaving. And this term, beating their breasts, in verse 48. So it's funny because here we have the centurion praising God. And then we have these people beating their breasts, which in that time is just a term of kind of grief and sorrow. And they're beating it, being like, oh, what just happened? Oh, no. Like, my heart, it hurts. And so we see the two. And then we get to the friends of Jesus. And the friends of Jesus, which are his acquaintances, his relatives, his friends, the ones who followed him, they stood there. And they watched him at a distance, watching everything happen, watching him hang there, watching him give up his spirit, watching him forgive people. And they're just sitting there, watching their Lord and Savior die on the cross. And so those are the three different people, the three different reactions that we have. We have the man who's praising God, the people who are grief, and the people who are mourning and having sorrow for this. Then there's the friends who are, I feel like they were just standing there kind of like, well, what's going to happen? And so I'm going to go back just a few verses, because we see all of this playing in. We see him being on the cross and him giving up his spirit and the temple being torn in two, and these people, just their lives being they're turning away, and some people's lives being changed, like the centurion and the friends. And then we go back a few verses, and this is huge, because just like in verse 46, where he chose to give up his spirit, here we have in verse 34, it says, and Jesus said, "Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do." And so Jesus is on the cross. And so I'm just going to let this sink in for a minute. So Jesus is arrested. He was flogged, which is basically just this awful, awful punishment where Jesus is being whipped with this whip, and there's glass and bone and everything on that. And that's being stuck to him, and then they pull it off, and he's just drenched in blood, scrapes all over him. And not only was that enough, but they made him carry his cross. And they had this man Simon help him as well. And so Jesus could barely walk. No one, scientists or doctors have basically said this kind of beating, you would not be able to recognize this person. So Jesus was not recognizable, just because of how bad the beating was. And then he's here in pain, trying to walk up to where he's going to be like put on the cross. And it was a little bit of ways away to Golgotha. And then he gets there, and they put him down. And then they put nails right through his hands and his feet, and they hang him there. And the moment that they put the cross up, his body just, the weight of it just goes down. And then, and to speak, like you can't breathe and speak, and then here he is. And in order to speak, he has to lift everything up, put all the pressure on his hands and his feet just to gasp in air. And then he's here talking and telling God and pleading with him, saying, "Father, forgive them. They don't know what they're doing." What kind of God does that? What kind of person would do that? Would risk pain and death to do that? And Jesus would. And he does it. He doesn't just do it once. He doesn't just lift himself up once, but he does it twice. And this second time, he's here committing his spirit. But Jesus is choosing to love. Jesus chooses this. He chooses to put himself up. So to be Father, no, to forgive them. Don't put your wrath on them. Keep putting it on me. Continue putting it on me. And so then Jesus does it again. He gives up his spirit. He chooses to give up his spirit. He's choosing this road because he knows that your life has value to it, that your life and relationship with God is worth dying on a wooden cross for. That while on the cross, Jesus saw your brokenness. He saw your loneliness and your searching and your rejection. And he's still saying, "I'm still dying for you." And he still asks God to forgive you. And so Jeremiah 1:5, you guys, it talks about how God knew you before he even formed you. He knew you with all of your sin. He still decided to create you. Your life was not a mistake because he chose to create you because he loves you, and he chose to love you. And he saw your purpose and your value, and he continues to see your purpose and your value, and he chooses to see that. He continues to choose this road that he had to die on for you. Imagine that love. You guys, I just want to encourage you. If you're feeling like you're searching, for other things, to be loved, to be wanted, to have that affirmation. I just want you guys to know you guys are loved and you are chosen. Like, he died for you. It's a personal death, but it's also an impersonal death, because he didn't just die for everyone. He died for you, and he died for me, but he also died for everyone as a whole. And that just blows my mind, that he saw your name. He saw mine, and he said, Ayla, I'm dying on the cross for you. He chose it because he wants to have a relationship, because he wants to know you. And just like my IBS, like, this sin that we live in, there's no cure for it. But Jesus, who died on the cross, that was the cure. That is our freedom from it. When we come to him, there's life. When we come to him, there's freedom from that. So I just encourage you guys, don't take my word for it. Don't take what I'm saying, but seek it for yourself. Look, read this. And if you have questions, read it. Come to me and I will try and find answers for you. I will go to scripture. But don't take my word. Just live this out. And just know that you are chosen and you are loved and you're wanted. Thank you.